Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we're rolling along here. We've got Thursday with 5 games in the NBA. We're going to get into our best bets in this one. We've also got play of props up in another video, so subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along all season with us. Also want you to head to thelines.com. Use everything that we're putting up on the site right now, including that prop finder tool. Make sure you're getting the best juice on all these bets you're making this season. Nate, let's go ahead, run right into your first pick for Friday here.
Thursday. We're on the same page though for the most part here on this 5-game slate, and it's for the Pacers to struggle offensively. So a little bit of a negative correlation here in that game as Sacramento returns home. I'll take De'Aaron Fox under 30.5 points. Kings at a bit of an adjusted spread. If you want to go to -5.5, you're still at plus 150 for that negative correlation parlay. Meaning, Fox does not need to score over 30 for the Kings to win this game. With the Pacers missing Halliburton on top of Bruce Brown, who's on his way out in a trade, do not yet have Siakam, and they're listing several other guys as questionable. And the Pacers are actually friggin' great stopping point guards for what it's worth. I mean, some with Halliburton in, they're probably going to be just as tough with TJ McConnell, Aaron Nesmith spending time on Fox. They allow the second fewest points to point guards in the last 15, fewest in the last 7 games. And Fox in his career, for what it's worth, 15.5 a game versus the Pacers, just has not had a very high usage rate. I mean, 19 points in the last time they hosted them 2 seasons ago. He only shot 7 for 11 in a blowout at home. The other 2 were kind of low-scoring slobber knockers when Domantas Sabonis was on the other side. Now he has Domas on his side, and he's probably going to be eaten tonight. I mean, we're both scared to take his unders just because of how much he can put up on a per minute basis, Domas. So that even if he's in there for 30-ish minutes, could have a triple double against a really bad defense that's apparently only good against point guards. But yeah, switching gears back to the Kings here, they're back home after a 5-game road trip. You would expect kind of a get right situation and maybe a lesson after they had this same situation, came back home and lost to Charlotte. Which is just an unbelievable fade there that Fox somehow had to go for 30, where we were trying to take this exact same bet because we expected them to win. But we'll just stick with that process here. He's gone under 30 in 6 straight home games otherwise. And the biggest thing here is the Pacers are terrible guarding the 3-point line, which is not going to be on Fox to produce. It's going to be on Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, et cetera, right? And the Kings are such a huge home road split team when it comes to shooting the 3-ball. I mean, they have the 9th best 3-point percentage at home this season. Last season, it was like a 9% difference when they were home versus away. And they're shooting 41% in their last 4 at home, despite facing some of the best 3-point defenses out there in that span. So I hope that is why they will pull away here. And it's not going to be because Fox is killing the Pacers in transition or anything. It's just going to be because the team is lighting it up as they try to light the beam back home.
Yeah, I like Keegan, actually. The more that you talk about that, his 3-point prop is at 2.5. I would say that's a pretty good number for him. He's been getting over that consistently with at least 3, and this is a team that's going to give up a ton of above the break threes in the Pacers, right, and all that kind of stuff in transition. So I do like Keegan as a result. 30.5 is nice. I could see a 30-point game from Fox, but that gets you under 30.5. So that number does seem a tick high based on what's the overall expectation for this game. But I actually like, for my first pick, an under for Indiana specifically at 119.5, which, if you like under 30.5 for D Fox, kind of seems like we like an under as this game keeps climbing in its total as well. What's it, like 247 at this point, which seems a little bit more ripe for an under than anything. I just want to make sure I'm getting that number right. 248.5. Jeez, it's keeps climbing and climbing. So it does seem like it's a little bit more ripe for an under because, in my opinion, with the Pacers specifically, I don't know that they're coming along for any ride. That the Kings are liable to go off at home, so they would be the team that I would see getting points here well before you see Indiana getting them. Right now, you've got Indiana, who just traded Bruce Brown. At this point, he's gone. He's a Pelican, I believe. Now, I have to keep looking at all the teams that are involved in that trade that sent Siakam to the Pacers, who's obviously not there yet. But there's just a whole laundry list of questionables, too, just to start with. We know that Bruce Brown's not in, obviously. We've got Halliburton questionable, Obi questionable, Benny Mathurin questionable, and Aaron Nesmith also. So it's really TJ McConnell, maybe some Nembhard and Miles Turner. And that's really what we're going to be looking at. I guess Jalen Smith will be in there as well. But yeah, that's not enough for me to get to 120 with this team. Like without Halliburton this season, they're averaging 115 and a half a game in the 7 games he's missed. Obviously 128 or so in the 33 games that he's played with this number one offense when he's in there. And so, yeah, the last 4 without him have been a lot of that as well. It's been, they're 2-2 in that time, 113 points per game. And Bruce Brown is the guy who pushes the tempo as well. Like when he's off the court, they have a much lower pace than when he was on the floor. And that's in part because Nembhard is a bit more of a true point guard than anybody else that they have outside of Halliburton. And while he still wants to push the pace, he does play at a slower pace than Halliburton. And now he's running the offense. So they failed to get this in 3 of these last 4. And 3 of those defenses were bottom 5 defenses or bottom 10 defenses with Atlanta, Washington, Utah just outside the bottom 10, and Atlanta and Washington, 2 of the worst 5 defenses in the league, as we know. They still weren't really able to do it other than against the Zards there. So yeah, at that 100 pace that they've had, that's the big thing that I'm looking at versus the 103 that they play with when Halliburton's in there. Now Bruce Brown as well. That's going to slow it down even more a tick. Yeah, I don't think that they're getting to the 120, and blow up possibilities are pretty high in this one.
Yeah, you had me at Halliburton, but then you sealed the deal with no Bruce Brown because yeah, he's such an underrated glue guy in terms of what they do offensively. Like at this point, if you're taking the Pacers to score a lot, it's completely just like system, just like Rick Carlisle patching it together, and the Kings just like not showing up sometimes, which they have done when you've seen some of these ridiculous high scoring games at home. But I think they will get right at some point. Maybe this is the spot. Obviously, we're not willing to take them at a large spread. I'll take the adjusted spread with what I'm talking about there. But fading the Pacers offense makes a lot of sense, like you said. I mean, initial good results without Halliburton, aside from their game in Boston. But, in Miami, when they dropped 144 without Halliburton, it was because Bruce Brown was the center of everything, right? So now they don't have him. Now teams are starting to adjust because it's been 4 straight without Halliburton, and I think the Kings will be pretty solid defensively here as they go. So let's take a team over here. Memphis Grizzlies, actually, 99.5, because if you're going to take an NBA team to score 100 points in this day and age, you're going to be right more often than not. And let's not confuse Memphis with Portland or organizationally, because Portland did go into Minnesota last week, and of course, as a part of a long road trip where they failed to get 90 points several times,
right?
They were completely shut down. Like Memphis is missing a lot of guys. Yes, no Bane, no Smart, no John Morant, obviously, but I mean Minnesota is aware of that too, and human nature, a little bit of a lapse. They're flying home from Detroit after on a back-to-back here, and they host OKC on Saturday. So this is very much a bit of a trap spot, or just a bit of a not give a care factor. In when you look at guys like, okay, Vince Williams and G.G. Jackson are the main weapons for Memphis here. Like they're going to sell out probably on Triple J. But those guys, that I mentioned are legitimately earning themselves contracts. Like Vince signed for 3 years now, playing pretty well. Memphis, more importantly, is scores more and plays faster on the road. 105 plus in 8 straight. Yes, they had Bane for those. They had Ja for half of those. They did get 121 at Phoenix without Ja, first time out there. Look at the larger sample size, 111 on the road versus 105 at home since the start of November. 3 more free throw attempts per game. That's where the Wolves struggled last year. And it's starting to rear a little bit in terms of their free throw rate is up over the last 2 months. They're allowing 22 per game. They're allowing 109 points per game. And it's a back-to-back situation. We've barely seen this from Minnesota this year, right? I mean, yeah. And they gave up 133 to Phoenix the first time out. They gave up 111 to the Lakers and then went to overtime with the Celtics. So 127 there. Larger sample size last season, 16 back-to-backs. They allowed 118 a game. Their free throw rate, they allowed 27.5 and allowed opponents to shoot nearly 50%. So I'm not counting on Memphis to light it up here, but they do have at least 103 in 3 of their last 4 against Mini without John Morant playing. So this same kind of awkward herky-jerky offense that we're probably going to see with just guys trying really hard. Because again, I go back to the organizationally, Memphis is not going to throw in the towel just because they're shorthanded. They have a really good G League program. They're bringing these guys up and showing what they can do, and I think they'll be able to put 100 points on the board.
Yep. Yeah, I was incorrect with my overreaction to their, the movement that happened with Ja out and now a bunch of guys hurt for them, right? And then bringing in the backups. Still, like you said, they're like Vince Williams is good. I'm really starting to like his game. Was happy to take over like 10.5 points for him against the Warriors recently. He cruised past that number. The everything else for them, yeah. If they, especially if they have Triple J going, then there's plenty to like about their ability to at least score. One thing, not love, because obviously Minnesota's been so good at defense at home, but like you said, the lapse is there in my opinion as well. The points off of turnovers could be there for them. Minnesota, like if you think they're going to be lackadaisical with the ball, that's been a problem for them. Is opponents getting into the fast break because they get lazy with it. And they give up a good amount of points off of turnovers, and not necessarily at home, but like we keep talking about, like it's just a blind spot for them, as it was for the Warriors, who didn't have any right or breathing room to be that way and still underestimated these Grizz. So I'm going to go over for the whole game as well, just to finish the point and segue into it, because it's at 213.5, and if you Minnesota should win this game. I don't. It could be if you think Memphis is going to climb right over and get about 105. Right, like we really just need like Minnesota to get like 109 at that point, right? 110, and like I do think they're liable for that. The down low stuff should be there for them. Now we are going to get a bit more Xavier Tillman. He played 30 minutes last game as Bismack is now gone. So that actually just opens things up probably for everybody, if anything, right? Like Tillman can play a little bit more back or facing the basket. He can play a little bit further away from the basket. He has attempted more threes this season than Bismack, that's for sure. It's not that many, but it's more than Bismack. So he's at least out there with like a slight threat. And that's what you look for when we talk about the pace. Like it was still kind of slow for them against the Dubs there, but the Dubs were awful in that game, shooting wise, and any way you put it, right? 10 for 32 from deep is not going to cut it for them. They rely too heavily on that three. I don't know that that's going to be the case for Minnesota, who doesn't rely necessarily as heavily on the three, but they're still going to be somewhat of a jump shooting team. I do think they'll have a bit more success than the Dubs. They just have better players. Like there's nobody. I mean, obviously Steph is there, but it's just around him. There's no real structure to the offense either in Golden State. And I think Memphis, their defense of basically like 108 defensive rating against the Dubs. Like I wouldn't expect that here against this team who is going to be coming at them, like I said, from a lot of different angles, but all the spots on the floor, mid range, and all those 9 to 15 feet, that type of area where they're shooting a lot of their shots and have a really high field goal percentage. Memphis that's the one area that they're really not that good. Triple J's coming off and protecting the rim more than anything, and now they're not nearly as going to be ferocious on the perimeter with that defensive backcourt at this point. With a little bit more Luke Kennard, you got some Jacob Gilliard in there. Definitely not defensive specialists. So yeah, overall for the game, I'm not worried about Minnesota to come along for the ride, but I heavily agree with Memphis being able to get theirs.
Yeah, I mean, and the good thing is Triple J is not like a traditional big who needs to score down low against these twin towers, right? I mean, he can pull them away and hit a couple threes if he's hot. Like you can seal this in probably. Yeah. But yeah, really just about mucking it up for Memphis, staying close enough to keep this respectable, and then. Yeah, I mean, you can look at Ant. I know there's some head-to-head props that I liked for Ant. You can only get those at DK, but like he's like -2.5 to outscore Triple J. I would take that. He does love playing against Memphis. So yeah, I think the Wolves will come and handle business here, but that their defense might lapse a little bit.
Yeah, it makes sense. I would agree with that entirely. Maybe they lapse on offense for a bit, but I still just think that the overwhelming talent desire to win this game in the end will at least prevail. So that is all the time we have for you in Best Bets. Continue to follow along, subscribe to that page so you can also check out the play of props that we have for you today and every day. And until we see you next, happy betting.